and you give me a call. We've got a police officer, Sergeant England of the Contra Costa County Sheriff's Office on the line. Sergeant England, thank you for calling.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So, you were the police officer that arrested the guy from Orinda who tapped the meter maid on the shoulder.
Well, not exactly. I was the supervisor that was in charge of the area. A different officer made the arrest, but I responded as the supervisor.
You know, you listen to the guy talk to me on the radio. It sounds like he taps her on the shoulder, and the cop went berserk, or the meter maid went berserk. How come he got arrested for assault and battery? Explain it from your perspective.
Well, it wasn't exactly, at least the story yesterday as it was told to me as the supervisor, from which would have been the parking enforcement officer and then the actual police officer who responded to her request for assistance. And then I actually spoke to the gentleman who was on the phone after he had been arrested and taken down to the police station. And, you know, obviously there's a little bit of a difference on the level of, you know, his anger and his demeanor at the time.
You mean he wasn't as polite as he made out on the phone to me?
Well, that's true. Actually, by the time I got there, he was also not angry either. But
yeah, because he was in handcuffs.
Right, yes, of course.
That'll calm you down pretty well.
It does, yes, it does. But, you know, what happened was a simple battery. First off, I'd just like to tell you that, you know, the advice that you did give, that I heard, I hope everybody else listened to it, because while this is, you know, this isn't the worst thing in the world, however, everybody should be very cautious about how you behave around an officer, because although this parking enforcement officer doesn't carry a gun, she was in a uniform, and what he maybe didn't say explicitly was that he did come up from behind her. So she didn't see him coming when he made contact with her. And, of course, there's a difference of opinion from her perspective as to a tap. She described it as something more than a tap.
Yeah, so and any touching, any unauthorized touching can be a battery, right?
Correct, right. Yeah, anybody, you can't lay your hands on anybody without permission. And certainly in this particular case, we would hope the public is a little more cautious around somebody wearing a uniform enforcing any type of law. And if you're going to go up and contact them, number one, try and control your emotions, even though it might be a stressful situation. You don't want to get the parking ticket. But then move around to the front of the officer so that they can have a visual view of you as you approach. Don't come up from behind them like what was described in this instance. And the gentleman did admit he came up from behind her also. So that is a dispute. Really, the only dispute is the level of the blow that he put to her shoulder. She described it as something other than a tap, something as a punch. And so in this instance, she exercised her right to have him arrested.
Absolutely. And if it goes to trial, I mean, you wind up with this misdemeanor charge going to a jury trial, very expensive proposition. My guess is the jury would believe the meter maid over the guy.
Yeah, that is a possibility. You know, that we did, I sent an officer to go and question all the witnesses that were at the restaurant out front and take statements and identify them. And what he also didn't tell you is that prior to issuing the parking ticket, the cars were parked directly in front of these tables in front of this restaurant, which are on the sidewalk, and she asked the people at those tables, she saw the expired meter, and she gave them the opportunity to pay the meter. She asked, does this car belong to anyone? This gentleman didn't respond. However, other people at the other tables did respond, saying that that wasn't their car. So she did afford somebody the opportunity to pay the meter. Then when she got no response, she then proceeded to input the information like he described. And unfortunately, these are automated machines, and once the process starts, there's no way to stop it.
So I know you don't have a crystal ball, and maybe this is not a fair question, but what's going to happen here? Is the DA going to dismiss it? Is it going to go forward? What do you think?
Of course, I can't speak for the DA. Obviously, yeah, he was issued a citation, released from custody. So
a misdemeanor, right?
Right, yeah, and he has an upcoming court date, and the report with the witnesses' statements then gets forwarded to the district attorney. Then they're the ones that will decide whether or not to prosecute, and they'll base it on the evidence, and I'm sure they take into other factors, you know, the necessity to prosecute any particular person based on their background and history. All those things will come into a factor whether or not they decide to file charges, and the demeanor of the alleged suspect. And I'll have to tell you, after the incident, he was very apologetic, and he expressed
remorse.
Right, exactly.
And that's in your report also.
Right, and that influenced what we ultimately do with.
Because you let him go.
Exactly.
He didn't spend the night, in a county jail. So the DA will look, and if the guy doesn't have a rap sheet, maybe the DA will drop it, maybe not. He's got a shot, right?
Right. There is the possibility no charges may be filed. That's correct.
Sergeant England, thank you for taking the time to call in. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome, man. You do a good job on the radio.
Thank you. Always good to hear the other side. 808-08.